going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Whiskey and History Podcast. I am your host, Zach Homeyer. Sorry, everybody. Life's been crazy. I haven't had much time to record any new episodes. I just got married 2 weeks ago, which is very exciting, to my lovely wife, Brianna. We've been planning that for the last 6 months, so I haven't had any time, which is a bad excuse because I love this podcast. I've actually still have a decent amount of listeners, so I appreciate people that are still following the show, wanting updates and all that fun stuff. But anyway, for today's episode, we're going to talk about the infamous serial killer, John Wayne Gacy. Many of you are going to be wondering why, obviously Illinois history, he killed many young men and boys, teenage boys in Chicago, Illinois. Again, I don't like focusing on the Chicago area, but surprisingly, I'm not going to be. The fun fact about John Wayne Gacy, I don't know how many of you know this, but he actually lived in Springfield, Illinois for a few years prior to the murdering that he conducted in Chicago, so in the 70s. So anyway, before we dive into the episode, of course, we have to figure out what whiskey I'm drinking. Me and my wife went on our honeymoon to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And if you guys haven't been there, I've never been there, first time. Tons of good food and a lot of good booze. We tried all kinds of different whiskeys and moonshines. We tried this really good whiskey that I ended up purchasing, which I only had a little small glass of it, like not even really a shot glass of it. It's from the Sugarlands Distilling Company, right in the heart of Gatlinburg. The whiskey I'm trying is the Tennessee Straight Rye Whiskey, also known as the Roaming Man Whiskey for the Wandering Spirit, which is kind of a fun theme because it's Halloween, the Wandering Spirit. Here we are talking about John Wayne Gacy is the other theme of this episode. Halloween, getting very close now. Anyway, this whiskey is aged for 4 years and about 5 months is about how long it's aged. It's not a very big container whiskey. It's like not even really a fifth, but it's really, really good stuff. It's more of a sipping whiskey. That's why we're going to take our time through this episode and really enjoy it. It was completely wax sealed. Let me take a quick smell before I take my first sip of this stuff again. Well, hear it pop open. You can smell all the good flavors. It just smells really good. I'm really excited to take a sip of this stuff again because I had a very small sip of it previously. So here we go. Ooh, that stuff is smooth. I'm just drinking it straight on the rocks with a splash of water. It's got a slight burn going down, clearing up my sinus cavity, which I desperately need. But anyway, let's dive into the episode. But for those of you who do not know who John Wayne Gacy is, he basically murdered several teenage boys and young men and buried them in his basement in his house in Chicago. Basically lured these young people, trying to sleep with them. Then he would murder them and bury them in the basement and in the garage. It was a very brutal. When they discovered all this, I highly recommend watching the Netflix documentary on John Wayne Gacy. They did this, I think, a year ago. It came out. Very, very good. It dives really into his life just a little bit prior to, he was born in Chicago. Then he ended up moving to Springfield as 22 years old. And then he ends up leaving Springfield for a little bit. And then he ends up back in Chicago, which we'll get into that. But that's where he is, his infamous story, also dressing up as a clown, luring children as well by dressing up as a clown at birthday parties and all that stuff. It's really sad, terrible thing that happened. But when I watched this documentary about a year ago, I was like, again, here's my curiosity. Let me do my own research. That's how these episodes always happen. I did some research into John Wayne Gacy just in the Springfield newspaper archives. I always go to the oldest, which I see it was like 1964. I'm like, interesting that something I got a hit in 1964. I find out that he gets married in 1964 in little old Springfield. Shocking. I was shocked. And then I did some Googling, and the Sangamon County Historical Society did a short little article, which I'm going to reference here, about his time living in Springfield. So I was just blown away that this infamous serial killer lived in Springfield for a short period of time. He lived in Springfield from 1964 to 1966. He was a big role member in the community. He was basically one of the big presidents. He was the vice president, worked his way up like from the bottom in the JC's Club, which is a youth organization for those of you who don't know. Kind of worked his way up to the top. He won Man of the Year in 1965 for all of his good work with the youth, which again is very kind of, disturbing when you look at the whole picture later in his life. So anyway, it's kind of crazy too, is he ends up getting married in the same church that I ended up getting married in just recently. So that's bone chilling. He got married in the Church of the Little Flower. His wife's name was Mary Ann Lee Myers. She actually grew up on the same street that I grew up as a child in Springfield, which is also very creepy. And to add another creepy element to this whole entire story, John Wayne Gacy also lived in the current neighborhood that I live. Don't worry, everyone. I double checked. It is not my house. My friends have always given me a hard time. Once, if you go down the basement and rip up some concrete and you find dead young boys. I'm like, no, not going there. Did my research. He lived about 3 or 4 blocks away from my house. The house is still standing. I don't want to give out addresses. I don't want to spook anyone that's still currently living in that house, which people do. I've shown my friends and family when we drive by, hey, that's where John Wayne Gacy lived, by the way, everyone. It's a good little chuckle, but a sad reality. But anyway, he got married on September 5th, 1964. Like I said, at the Church of the Little Flower, the same church I just got married in. Nothing much too exciting about the marriage, just your traditional Catholic wedding. It's a Catholic church. At the time, he was a shoe salesman, and that's where he met his wife, at the same department store for Robert Brothers men's clothing store. You want to get more specific, but he was actually highly sought out through the community of Springfield. Like I said, he won Man of the Year at the JCs. Here's a quote from the newspaper. His activities over the year included representing the JCs with the Springfield Central Area Development Association and chairman of the following projects: the state convention and the inaugural banquet, Operation Security, promotion of the U.S. savings bonds in Illinois, opening day parade at the Illinois State Fair, and the Christmas parade. Besides, that was a quote from the State Journal-Register. Besides that, Gacy also spoke about labor representatives on the behalf of school bond issues in 1964, and next year helped boost the JC's Beautiful Springfield campaign. And with the bond issues with the school, it was the school in Lake Town where I currently live. He was a big part in that. Again, that's very freaky to me because it's like, here we are, in my neighborhood. And then after he got married, he had a son in February of 1966. And then it's just kind of hard to believe because, like, John Wayne Gacy living in Springfield is kind of sought after, like, as the best years of his life, which is kind of crazy. Like, in many of the biographies written about him, it talks about how really Springfield, he was he was a big person in the community. People really respected him. He was a go-getter. He went out and did what he needed to do to advance in the JCs. He was very active in his community. I found another interesting article. JCs plan a show for teenagers. Basically, at the Illinois State Armory, which I've talked about in previous episodes, he ends up getting a show set up just for the youth. Again, it's kind of creepy. He's focusing on the youth, of getting people together to go see the Kinks, which is a big band back then and still very popular. I like their music. And Dick and Dee Dee and the Rivieras. But it was kind of interesting because it's like, here we are again. He's very involved with the youth. He really likes to be involved with that, which later in life is not good because that's what he ends up, who he rapes and murders, is young men. But anyway, in one of the biographies by Tim Cahill writes, in the Buried Dreams Inside the Mind of a Serial Killer, which came out in 1986, it is also in Springfield. However, according to what John Wayne Gacy told Cahill, that Gacy had his first sexual encounter with another man. And Gacy's description, a drunken seduction by another JC. So, like I was saying, it's kind of disturbing. Here we are, this guy, not disturbing, disturbing in the way that I'm trying to explain here is like later in life, this is what he does. He gets drunk with other young boys, lures them back to his house with, I'm going to drink and have a good time, and then he rapes and murders them. Here he is getting drunk and having sexual encounters with other young men that are part of the JCs. And you have to look back, this is the 60s, people were closeting this stuff, was very frowned upon society. We don't need to go into that giant rabbit hole. I think we all have a good understanding of that, but it's just kind of crazy because my mind wonders, what could have happened? Did it happen? Did anyone disappear in this time period? I haven't really done my own research on that. I'm kind of curious to really look, which would be a lot of work to look from, 1964 to 1966 of young people disappearing in the community. I'm kind of curious if it was a lot of young men. That's one thing that you internet sleuths or sloths or whatever you want to call them, go out there and do your research. I may, when I have some time, do it myself. But anyway, Gacy was elected the local JC's first vice president for 1965 and 66. But the Gacys moved to Waterloo, Iowa in the spring of 1966, so Gacy could take over management of his father-in-law's Kentucky Fried Chicken outlets. And then Marilyn divorced Gacy in 1968 after his conviction for sexual assaulting the son of a fellow Iowa JC. So here he is going to another JC in another community and sexually assaults a minor. And going back to the Netflix documentary, they focus on a lot of that. They really take off the story of him focusing on his life in Waterloo, Iowa, and how he seducted and, this minor young boy or young man from the Iowa JC. They focus on that, and then it continues on to him moving to Chicago and doing what he did. And again, Gacy later moved on to the Chicago area where police investigating the disappearance of a 15-year-old boy discovered the bodies of 29 young men buried in and around Gacy's suburban home. He is believed to have killed 33 boys and young men between 1972 and his arrest in December of 1978. He was executed at the Stateville Correctional Center on May 10th, 1994. So again, this is something short, little fun episode talking about how this could have happened, possibly even in the Springfield community. I don't know if anyone's done the research on it. Probably Netflix did a really good job, recreating some of the, how they always do little recreation parts for documentaries. They've done a good job of that with real actual photos, real news footage. of John Wayne Gacy and the news outlets talking about the police going through his home, discovering all the bodies. It's very, very just unbelievable because I didn't really understand the story of how severe and how just crazy and insane this man was. And to me, it still gives me chills, like just chills thinking that this person was sought out as like a great person in our community in Springfield for a short period of time. And I don't even know if that's really true. And just thinking of that, I just need to take another drink, everyone. Because, ooh, that stuff just smooth. But it just makes me really wonder. And I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. It's just a fun, short and sweet little episode. All my research has been done from the State Journal Register and, again, the Sangamon County Historical Society. If you just Google John Wayne Gacy in Springfield, Illinois, it pops up. The Wikipedia barely touches about it, but again, how reliant is Wikipedia? Anyone can edit it. I can do it right now after 2 drinks. But anyway, again, it's just fascinating to me that this bloodthirsty murderer lived in our community for 4 years or 3 years, and no one knows if he ever committed a murder or a crime so severe in our own community. Like I said, guys, hope you enjoyed this Halloween episode. Let me know if you guys like this trend. Maybe next year I can do some more on just who knows what you can find in Springfield. It's a huge history of our community that is just, again, overshadowed by our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. So, like, little things like this, not very many people know about, like John Wayne Gacy living in our community or Martin Luther King visiting our community. All these different things that I've talked about are just overshadowed by, again, which I understand, our great president, Abraham Lincoln. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening. And don't worry, guys, I'm back and I have plenty of time to make some new content. And I'm very excited. I have a whole list of tons of things to talk about. It's just, history's almost endless. And I hope you enjoyed this. And happy Halloween and trick or treat. And don't forget, guys, to rate the show, leave a comment on the YouTube. I love seeing everyone's feedback and let me know what you guys think. And I appreciate everyone that listens to it. Have a happy Halloween.